Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm not going to be diving into a stock valuation or performing machine learning. Instead, I wanted to shed some light on a financial strategy I've been doing for the past 5 years and plan to continue to do so into the future. This is the Mega Backdoor Roth. Now, you might have come across other videos explaining what it is and crunching some numbers. One thing I've noticed is that they don't really show you how it's done, which I intend to do in this video and is actually pretty simple. A quick a quick summary of the Mega Backdoor Roth is that it allows you to supercharge your retirement savings by contributing to an after-tax option within your 401k plan. It is worth noting that not everyone will have access to this option, especially if you work for a small company. Typically, it's more common for employees of large corporations with plans that offer this feature. And if your 401k plan allows for it, one major perk of the after tax contribution is that it can be rolled over into a Roth IRA account since you've already paid taxes on that money. And I will walk through how that rollover can be performed. And by being in an IRA account, that will give you a wider range of investment opportunities. This is quite a contrast to your company's 401k plan, where your investment choices are limited to your company's stock, a few index funds, maybe fixed income, and possibly a REIT. But first, we'll walk through an example of how everything is done. So let's jump right into it. Let's look at this Excel example first. So you can see here on the right, I have this bar graph. This is to help illustrate the values on the left-hand side. So let's say your yearly salary is $125,000. And for 2023, your maximum 401k contribution is $22,500, which would be 18% of your salary. Now, this is shown here in the graph in blue. And for the Mega Backdoor Roth, the maximum contribution for 2023 is $66,000, and that's shown here in yellow. Now, if we take the $66,000 and minus the $22,500, that leaves $43,500 available for both company match and the after-tax contribution. Now, let's say your company matches 4%. So 4% of your salary would be $5,000. And that is shown in the graph in red. Now, if we take the $43,500 and minus the company match of $5,000, that leaves $38,500 for your after-tax contribution, which is shown here in green. So when you add up the 401k in blue, the company match in red, and the after-tax, that can total up to $66,000, which is the Mega Backdoor Roth. I know making $125,000, trying to max out the Mega Backdoor Roth at $66,000 would be quite a challenge. You're looking at almost 50% going away into your savings. But hopefully over time, as your salary increases, maybe you pay down some debt, you're able to put that money into your savings, letting it to compound over time. And those that are able to max this out are typically those with a high income or a super saver or somewhere in between where they do have a good salary and also they're a good saver taking advantage of this benefits. Now let's look at a few other examples just to see how these numbers change with higher and maybe lower salaries. So let's now assume that you're making 160,000. And we can see here the 401k contribution now drops to 14%, and the after tax contribution drops to 23%, and the company match is $6,400. So this is probably still a little bit of a challenge. Even making $160,000, you're still looking at over 30% going away into savings. Now, let's just say you work for a good company that gives you a good company match, and that match is 6%. So we're going to change the 4% to 6%. And we'll see now that the company match goes up to 9,600, and now your after-tax contribution drops by about 2% down to 21% for 33,900. So you can see how these numbers start changing either with your salary or with the company match. And let's just look at one other one at a higher contribution, and then we'll look at a lower salary. So making 200,000, we can see here your 401k is now 11%, and your after-tax contribution is just under 16%. So, and with a company match of 6% is 12,000. So this getting a lot closer to being achievable at this salary, as long as you don't have a lot of debt to pay off, a high mortgage or car payments. Somebody making $200,000, depending on their situation, could potentially achieve this. This does become a lot more challenging for those with a lower salary. So let's just look at 100,000 and go back to that 4% company match, which is probably a little more common. 6% is probably more on the higher side. And we can see here now 100,000 max out the 401k is 22.5%, and then the after-tax contribution is almost 40%. So not realistic here, putting away 60% of your income, but hopefully you could put a little bit into that after-tax contribution. Maybe it's not 10, 20%, maybe it's only a couple percentage points, but over time it will add up. Now let's move over to an actual retirement platform to see how this all gets entered in so you can do it yourself. My company recently changed providers of our retirement savings plan, but they were pretty similar between what you're seeing here and the previous one. And depending on what your platform looks like, you should see a change contribution option or something similar. Now, I previously did go in and change everything to zero. And you can see here, so right now it's showing before tax, zero, Roth, zero, and after tax. So before tax would be like your traditional 401k, Roth would be the Roth 401k, and then after tax is what gives you that Mega Backdoor Roth. So before I understood what it was, I had no idea what this after tax meant. But eventually I learned about it, and that's where we're going to enter everything. So let's scroll down a little bit. We're going to enter our information, what we want. So if you remember back from that example with somebody making 125,000, if we want to max out the 401k, that would be 18%. Right. And then for after tax, to max out would be just under 31%. So actually, let's just say it was 30%, and I would choose that. Now, again, this is a lot of money for somebody making 125,000, looking at almost 50%. So maybe it's not quite 30%, but maybe it's only 10%. And that would provide you that after-tax contribution, putting it towards that Mega Backdoor Roth. And if you remember from our other example with somebody making $200,000, the 401k contribution would be 11%. And with a company match of 6%, that would give them 12,000 there. So leaving the after-tax contribution at basically about 16,000. So in that situation, they'll be maxing out that Mega Backdoor Roth between the three categories: the 401k, the company match, and then the after-tax would equal up to the $66,000 as we saw a few minutes ago. Depending on your income, you'll make changes accordingly. So hopefully you'll be able to at least max out the 401k, putting into the Roth, not the traditional, and moving on from there into the after tax. Now, you might not be able to max it out, but putting a small percentage in, and as we discussed, growing it over time as you get pay increases and paying off some debt, moving that money into the savings. Next, going to walk through how to do a rollover. And since this after tax contribution has already been taxed, you can roll it into a Roth IRA. And as a side note, a new tax law allows you to roll over a company match. Now, if you roll that over into a Roth IRA, you would have to pay taxes on that company match. So just keep that in mind. So to do the after-tax rollover, you probably have one of two methods. For example, my previous provider of the 401k plan, I would have to call them up. And that first time calling up, you may get the runaround. You probably speak to people who have no idea what you're asking about, but keep trying, ask to speak to somebody else, and eventually you'll get to somebody who handles your 401k or conversions. And once you do get that person, ask if they have a direct line to that department so you don't have to go through multiple people in the future. And each time you would call them up and they would help you do that conversion. However, with the new 401k provider, I actually had to set some things up and I do it online. So looking at the screen here, we can see I have these options, and your options might be a little different, but somewhere you should see like a rollover here. Mine says withdrawal and rollovers. So I go ahead, I click that, and this would bring me to a new screen. And actually, I have to walk through a couple of screens to actually do the rollover. And the first time setting it up is a little cumbersome, but once it's set up, it goes a lot smoother. So you can see here, I have an in-service withdrawal. So this is my current after-tax contribution that I have in my 401k. Below is the company match that's available for rollover now. Since this tax law was just changed this year, I do have quite a bit built up, but I'm not rolling that over, as I would have to pay tax on, if I roll the whole thing over, I'd have to pay taxes on that total amount. But for the in-service withdrawal, this is for the after-tax, I'm going to click Get Started. Here we are on this next window, and you can see I have these three choices, and the one I'm going to select is this first one, roll over an amount to an IRA or another employee plan. And these two other options I just never select. So that's the one we want to go with. And then you can see I get this drop down with a few other options. Choose how you want my money. So I'm just going to roll it over in cash, and it's going to go over into a Roth IRA. And again, I'm not going to do a partial rollover with anything paid to me, and I definitely don't want the whole thing paid to me. So now we go to continue. So just telling me I'm going to be charged a little fee for this. This next window is just asking how much I want to roll over, and I'm going to do the entire amount. I can also select a partial amount if I chose not to do the total. So let's just go to continue. All right, this window is just showing a little bit of a breakdown. So you can see here total amount available. I'm just showing the $856, and that is broken out between taxable and non-taxable. So the non-taxable is the after-tax contribution. The taxable is my recent company match that's available, not the amount that was over the past 5 years, just what has been available this year when the tax law has been changed. So I'm going to roll over the entire thing, both non-taxable and taxable. So I just need to remember I'm going to have to pay taxes on this amount. So I'm going to just choose all of the cash that's available and click next or continue. So this window is just confirming what I want to roll over. They're not withholding any taxes for me. So any taxes I need to pay, whether federal or state, it's something I need to do myself. This window, just some information that I need to be aware of. So I'm just going to say acknowledge and click continue. So this window for choose destination, I am taking my money out of my 401k provider and actually moving it over to a different provider that handles my Roth IRA. So the first time you do this, you're going to have to set this up. So what I had to do, I had to call my Roth IRA provider and get the information on where this check gets mailed. So once I got that information, I entered it here. And when I did my first rollover, I just did a small amount, maybe $10 or $100, just to confirm that it worked and it went into the right place. So I'm going to do rollover here, and my information on where it's going has already been entered, and just click continue. So here, it's just asking me for one final review to make sure this is what I want to perform. And I am just going to hit submit, and we're going to see the transaction be processed. So we can see here, my rollover has been completed. So this is just acknowledging what I've submitted. So it does take about a week for my money to move from my 401k plan provider over into my Roth IRA. But it has taken up to 2 weeks, but typically it takes about a week. I know walking through that example of doing the rollover took a little bit of time and there's a lot of steps. But once you get everything set up and you go through it 2 or 3 times, it actually goes pretty quickly. And just know that your platform might be slightly different on how to do it, but you probably have a lot of the same features or at least windows that you need to click through. So just keep that in mind. What you see will probably be a little different than the platform I'm working on. Now that we walked through this, I'm going to move over and show you what it's going to look like in your paycheck with the withdrawals for both your 401k, which you're probably already aware of, but then also for the after tax. Here we got an example of a pay stub, and right in the middle is the after-tax contribution, and the very bottom is the Roth contribution amount. So this is the standard Roth 401k that many people have available, and for 2023, as we mentioned, the maximum is 22,500. Now, right above it is a SIP 401k contribution. Now, that's the after tax amount that's taken out of your paycheck. So, that is what goes towards the Mega Backdoor Roth. So, for 2023, the Mega Backdoor Roth was $66,000. So, when you add up the 401k contribution plus your company match, and you subtract that from the 66,000, that would be the after tax amount you can put in this example is showing up as the SIP 401k. So your paycheck might be a little different, but you should see two line items, one for your 401k normal contribution, whether you do traditional or Roth, and then a second one for the after tax. But again, it might be a little different depending on how your company does your payroll, but you should see something similar to this. And lastly, on your platform for your 401k, you should see an option for contributions. That should take you to a page similar to this, where you would have this year-to-date contribution. And here you can see how much you actually put in to this Mega Backdoor Roth. So you would have your 401k contribution amount, your after-tax contribution amount, and then your company match. And you just want to make sure, if you're trying to max it out, that you're staying under the $66,000, at least for 2023. So if you are one of those individuals that either have a high income or a super saver or somewhere in between, you'd want to come here every so often throughout the year just to make sure you're not going to exceed the amount for that year. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it valuable. So consider subscribing below, and hopefully I'll see you next time.